amateur video out of Syria shows today what may be the start of a civil war. A growing number of military defectors taking up arms against the government, against government troops and tanks. We should note that MSNBC has not been able to independently verify this video. Richard Engel is NBC's chief foreign correspondent and is live in Istanbul, Turkey. Richard, what do we know? I know that part of this started with the Arab League meeting in Rabat, Morocco. Its ouster, the ouster of Syria from the Arab League. But what dynamic are you hearing from your sources now?
We're seeing two very different dynamics, but both of them have the same objective, which is to pressure Syria, to pressure the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. Diplomatically, much more pressure coming from the Arab League, including that three-day deadline to allow international observers, including, we're told, some foreign journalists. And if they don't allow these observers to go in, then they will face more sanctions. And they, of course, Syria would have to stop the violence. No indication that Syria has any intention of either allowing the observers or stopping the violence. That's diplomatically. On the ground, we're watching the real emergence of this thing called the Free Syrian Army. It is a group of defectors. How big it is unclear. According to members of the Free Syrian Army we've spoken to, they claim they have a force of between 15 and 20,000 people. These are soldiers and police sometimes who left the formal security forces of the Syrian government and have joined this rebel army. Now, the regime itself dismisses that number, the 15 to 20,000, as wildly inflated. What cannot be denied, however, is that this rebel group is starting to take military action. It has some relatively sophisticated weapons. It's been able to destroy several tanks. How many tanks, we don't know, but at least 4, according to multiple sources inside Syria. It is a different dynamic, and it's unclear if this is really a tipping point. People are now starting to take wagers on how long the government in Syria will last. According to members of opposition we've been speaking to, they think weeks, perhaps a few months, but it's really hard to know.
And on the diplomatic front, the Arab League apparently had second thoughts, offered to send military and diplomatic observers to Syria to try to give them a second chance to comply. I don't know where that stands right now and whether there's any indication that the Assad regime is going to try to work with the Arab League after everything that's happened in the last 48 hours.
Well, Syria is now suspended from the Arab League, and Syria all along, it's a little bit like, if you remember, Libya. Gaddafi said, of course, Libya is abiding by the ceasefire, and we fully accept the terms of the ceasefire, and then on the ground, people were being shot, and the Libyan army was attacking. Syria is taking a pretty similar position. Syria all along maintains that it wants the Arab League peace initiative, that it is abiding by the Arab League peace initiative. Syrian state television is broadcasting to the Syrian people that its troops are being pulled back from Syrian cities, but that's not the case. The Syrian military is still continuing to carry out offensive operations and now sometimes defensive operations as this Free Syrian Army is going on the offensive.
It just seems as though to have the Arab League suspending Syria, which has been such a major player in the Arab League for all of these years, and then to have the Arab League perhaps having second thoughts about taking that tough stance, and Assad, you don't know whether he's cornered or whether this thing is going to end up being civil war. Richard Engel, an extraordinary story.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there are deep concerns about the possibility of a real civil or sectarian war in Syria. Bashar al-Assad is playing off of these fears to a degree, maybe even exacerbating them. But you have to look at the dynamic in Syria. You have a Shiite government, only maybe 10 to 15% of the population being members of the Alawite Shiite community, and almost all of the opposition forces are members of the Sunni majority. And it's the exact flip side of what we saw in Iraq, where you had a Sunni government and a Shiite majority, and we all know what happened there. So there are deep concerns that if the regime goes, and it goes suddenly, what will replace it?
Richard Engel, thank you very much. Thanks for the report today.